Hi, welcome to Lifesavers VBS.
Hi, my name is Adina.
Hi, my name is Aaron.
Welcome to Song Service. Our first hymn is Behold, Behold, I Stand at the Door and Knock. Behold, behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. Behold, behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. If anyone hear my voice, if anyone hear my voice, I will open the door and let come in. Behold, behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. Behold, behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. If anyone hear my voice, if anyone hear my voice, open the door and let come in. Our next hymn is Little David, Play on Your Heart. Little David, play on your heart. Hallelujah, hallelujah. David, play on your heart. Hallelujah. David was a shepherd boy. He killed Goliath and shouted for joy. David, play on your heart. Hallelujah, hallelujah. David, play on your heart. Hallelujah. Our next song is Give Me Oil in My Lamp. Give me oil in my lamp, keep it burning, burning, burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray, hallelujah. Give me oil in my lamp, keep it burning, burning, burning. Keep it burning in the break of day. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Our next hymn is I Have Decided to Follow Jesus. 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 No turning back, no turning back. Go none, go willingly, I shall follow. Go none, go willingly, I shall follow. Go none, go willingly, shall follow. No turning back, no turning back. Our final song is "'Tis Simple as Can Be." "'Tis simple as can be, as clear as ABC. Christ came and saved, His life is good to rescue you and me. Don't let on to your own terror, but trust only His God, and by His grace you see
My notes from yesterday's lesson tells me that God protected baby Moses and baby Jesus from danger. And just as he protected them from danger, he can protect me too. That's my first lesson. My second lesson tells me that God has a plan for each of us. He used Moses to save the Israelites from Egypt, and Jesus came to die on the cross and save us from sin and provide for us a way to have life eternal in heaven. And the third lesson from yesterday's Bible lesson tells me that because of God's goodness, because He provides and protects, we should always be thankful to Him. For yesterday's preparedness lesson, my notes says that when we are prepared, we are less scared. So it is always important for us to be prepared because we are able to deal with whatever comes our way better when we are prepared.
Come on, let's go. Pitch in, yeah. Lend a helping hand to everyone you can. Come along, you can't go wrong. If I can, you can. Lend a helping hand, make a difference in our plan. Me and you add up to two, and that means we can do. Come on, let's go. Pitch in, yeah. Remember that you might need someone to help you get through the things that you do. Lend a helping hand to everyone you can. Come along, you can't go wrong. If I can, you can. Lend a helping hand, make a difference in our plan. Me and you add up to two, and that means we can do. Come on, let's go. Pitch in, yeah.
Hello boys and girls, welcome to day 2 of Lifesavers Vacation Bible School. The story I want to share with you today is about a young man who was just about 17 years old when he had a pretty bad experience. The Bible says something special about him though. It says that the Lord was with him and he was a prosperous man. Today we are talking about Joseph. Now let me tell you some things about Joseph. He was the number 11 son of 12 sons. So that means there were 10 boys who were older than him and there was just one who was younger than he was. Their father's name was Jacob and they all lived in the land of Canaan. Now there was something special about Joseph and his father saw it and he seemed to love Joseph more than he loved his other sons. And one day he gave Joseph the most beautiful gift. It was a coat of many colors. And of course, his brothers were very jealous. They realized that their father loved Joseph more than he loved them. They began to hate him and they had nothing good to say about him. But it became even worse. Joseph began having dreams. And his dreams did not say anything that sounded good to them at all. That suggested again that they would all be worshiping or bowing down to him. He dreamt that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. His brothers were not happy about that dream at all. They said, "You think that we are going to have to bow down to you? We're going to have to be your slaves?" And they hated him even more. Now one day, They were far away taking care of the sheep, and his father told him, "Go check on your brothers, see how they are faring, see what's going on with them." When they saw him coming, they got an idea. They decided that they can kill him, and in that way, they would get rid of all these dreams he had been having. Their oldest brother, Reuben, said, "No, don't kill him. Let's just throw him in one of these dry wells here." You see, Reuben had planned that when they were not looking, he would take Joseph out of the well and he would send him scurrying home. But that did not happen. While Reuben was away tending to the sheep, some traders passed. Some persons on their way to sell goods in Egypt came by. And his brothers, Joseph's brothers, got another plan. They decided, we don't have to kill him to get rid of him. We can just sell him. And they did just that. Joseph pleaded with them. He begged them not to sell him, but they did. Soon, Joseph was in Egypt. He was sold to a man named Potiphar. He was a slave in Potiphar's house. But Potiphar saw something special in Joseph. He saw that he was different. And soon enough, Joseph was in charge of Potiphar's house. But one day, Potiphar's wife told a lie on Joseph. And Joseph was thrown into prison. But do you know what? Even the prison warden, the man in charge of the prison, even he saw that something was special about this young man. And soon, Joseph was placed in charge of the prisoners. Now, one morning, Joseph realized that two of the prisoners were really very sad. When he asked them what was wrong, they shared with him their dreams. One of them was a butler who had served the Pharaoh, and the other was a baker who had served the Pharaoh. What did those dreams say? The butler dreamt that he picked some lovely bunches of grapes and he squeezed the juice into a cup and gave it to Pharaoh. The baker dreamt that he had 3 baskets of bread on his head and birds came and ate them all. Now Joseph was really happy to tell the butler what his dream meant. It meant that in 3 days he will be serving the Pharaoh again. But he was not happy to tell the baker what his dream meant, because it meant that in 3 days he would be killed. And just as Joseph predicted, just what he explained would happen in those dreams, they happened exactly as he said. 2 years passed. The butler did not remember Joseph, but Joseph continued to serve well. He continued to live just as he had been taught by his father. He continued to honor God. One night, Pharaoh had not one dream, but 2 dreams. They were troubling dreams. In one of those dreams, he saw 7 fat, juicy ears of corn and 7 thin, dry ears of corn. But strangely enough, the dry, thin ears of corn ate the strong and healthy and juicy ears of corn, but they remained thin. In his second dream, he saw 7 fat cows on the river Nile grazing, and then came 7 dry, thin cows from the river Nile, and they ate the fat cows, but they remained thin. Strange dreams, they troubled the Pharaoh. He could not understand what these dreams meant. And so in the morning, he shared his dreams with the persons who were around him. And at that point, the butler remembered Joseph. He remembered that there was a young man in the prison who was able to predict just what would happen in his dreams. And he shared that information with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh sent for Joseph. Joseph was hurriedly given a bath, and his hair was cut, and he was dressed, and he was brought before the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh asked, "Can you tell me what my dream meant? Can you tell me what my dreams mean?" Well, Joseph explained, "It is not me, but it is my God, the God of heaven, who is able to interpret and explain these dreams." So Pharaoh shared with Joseph what he dreamt, that there were 7 dry ears of corn, and they ate the 7 fat ears of corn, but they remained thin and haggard. And the same thing with the cows. There were 7 thin cows that ate 7 fat cows, and the thin cows remained the same. What do these dreams mean? God explained to Joseph, and Joseph shared that information with the king. It meant that there would be 7 years when the crops in Egypt would bear abundantly. There would be more than they're accustomed having. They would have 7 years of abundance. But then there would be 7 years of famine. There would be nothing growing. Wow. So what was I to do? Pharaoh wondered. Then Joseph continued, get someone who is wise, get someone who is disciplined, get someone who can take care of gathering food during the years of plenty and storing it away so that when there is a famine, or so when the famine comes, Egypt would have food. Pharaoh thought that that was an excellent idea, and so he decided that Joseph, who was able to interpret his dream, Joseph, who obviously was different, Joseph, whose God was able to tell the future, would be the perfect man for this job. And so he put Joseph in charge of Egypt. So the only person who was more important than Joseph in the whole land of Egypt was Pharaoh himself. Could you imagine that? Joseph came to Egypt as a slave, but now he was the prime minister. So Joseph spent those 7 years when there was plenty food, going around from farm to farm, from place to place, collecting all the food stuff, the extras, and making sure that they stored those things well so that when the 7 years of famine come, they would have food. And after a while, the 7 years of plenty had passed and the famine came. And you know what? There was lots of food in Egypt because God had spoken to Pharaoh through Joseph. Because God had used Joseph to explain to Pharaoh what was going to happen, and so they were able to prepare for the famine. But in the countries around Egypt, there was little or no food. And one of the places that did not have food was Canaan. And do you know who lived in Canaan? Yep, Joseph's brothers and his father. So Joseph's father sent his sons to Egypt to get food. When Joseph's brothers got to Egypt, they had to go to the person who was responsible for the food, the person who was in charge of distributing food. And who do you think that was? Oh yes, it was Joseph. He recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And what do you think happened? What do you think that was the first thing that they had to do? They had to bow before him. So here was the dream that he had, or here were the dreams that he had being fulfilled. They had to bow to him. Joseph allowed them to have food. There were lots of things that happened after this first meeting, but we are not going to go into those things right now. What happened in the end, though, was that Joseph's brothers had to bow to him. And because God had used Joseph in this marvelous way to explain to Pharaoh what his dream meant, and then God had used him to collect food and provide food for the years, and because God had used him in such a wonderful way, Egypt had food not just for Egypt, but for the countries around. Joseph was able to let his brothers know who he was. He had forgiven them for the wicked thing they had done to him, but he understood that God had allowed it to happen so that they would be able to be provided with food during the years of famine. Joseph told them, do not worry. Do not be angry at yourselves for selling me, because God has put me here to provide food and to save my people. So his father and his brothers and all their families were able to come down to Egypt and live and have plenty of food because of Joseph. Now, there are some lessons that I want you to remember from this story. Let's look at those lessons. God can use you to help others. God used Joseph to explain to Pharaoh what was going to happen, and he also instructed Joseph in telling Pharaoh how he can prepare to preserve food for his nation, for the nation of Egypt. And in doing that, not only was Egypt spared from the famine, but the countries all around. So God can use us to bless others. Another lesson I want you to take from this story is that when you are prepared, you are able to help others. So when you prepare, when your family prepares, if your family is prepared for an emergency and another family did not prepare, you may just be able to help that family. So let's always be prepared, because our preparedness may allow us to help others who are not prepared. Another lesson I want you to take from this story is that when we forgive others, it's a blessing to them. If Joseph did not forgive his brothers, he would not have been able to help them. But because God lived in his heart, he was able to forgive them, and he was able to help them in time of trouble. The other lesson is that when people have done us wrong, we don't have to do them wrong in return. Joseph's brothers were very unkind to him, but when he saw them and he had a chance to pay them back in return, he did not. He did not pay them back. He did not treat them as they treated him. He forgave them. And that is what God wants us to do. He wants us to forgive each other. And boys and girls, we can be prepared to forgive others when we ask Jesus to come into our hearts and to give us a spirit of forgiveness.
Hey boys and girls, we are now at the quiz section of our program. So I hope you're ready and that you were paying attention to what came before, because now we're going to have a quiz on our Bible lesson. Question number 1. How old was Joseph when his brothers sold him into slavery? The answer is he was 17 years old. Question number 2. Why did they sell him into slavery? The answer is because they were jealous that their father Jacob loved him more than he loved them. Question number 3. Whose dreams did Joseph interpret in prison? The answer is a baker and a butler who had served Pharaoh. Question number 4. What do you think was special about Joseph? The answer is he was obedient and faithful to his God. Question number 5. How did Joseph become the Prime Minister of Egypt? The answer is he explained Pharaoh's dream and told him how he could save Egypt from famine.
Oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in, I would like to be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in, this train is a holy train. This train
Hi, I'm Uncle Anthony, and today we are going to be looking at emergency preparedness. Do you know what is an emergency? Well, an emergency is when something unexpected happens that needs to be dealt with right away. What do we mean by preparedness? Well, we mean being ready. So, I have two important questions for you. Are you or your family prepared for an emergency or a disaster? If the answer to that question is yes, well, good for you. If the answer is no, then you need to pay closer attention. How can you and your family prepare for a disaster? That is what I'm going to be sharing with you in a few moments from now. When I am finished, you should be able to make a communication plan in case of an emergency or disaster and put together an emergency kit. Before we go to work, let me tell you that emergencies can strike quickly and without warning. But before emergencies occur, you can take important steps that will save lives and protect your family. So, are you ready? Let's go! Now, it is important to know what type of disasters could affect where you are. Just stop for a moment and think about that. It might be a hurricane, an earthquake, a tsunami, maybe even a fire or something else. Sometimes it will become necessary for persons to evacuate. What do I mean by that? To evacuate simply means to leave a place in a quick and organized way. We sometimes evacuate during an emergency. For example, when there is a fire drill at your school, the students and teachers are asked to evacuate the school. Now, sometimes during an evacuation, families can get separated, or it could be that your family may not be together when a disaster strikes. It is important that you know how you will contact each other or reconnect if separated. To do that, it is necessary to decide on a family meeting place that is familiar to all of you and easy to find. Of course, that place needs to be a safe place. You should make a list of all family members and have their phone numbers, cell phone number, and work number. You can also include the names and numbers of neighbors, just in case, and the name and numbers of relatives not living in the same area. As a family, you should decide on the name of one person whom all of you will contact if you become separated. Preferably, someone not in the disaster, as they may be easier to reach. In emergencies, text messages work better than phone calls, as the lines are usually busy. So let's look at making an emergency kit. An emergency kit has all the things that you and your family may need during an emergency in which you may have to stay inside for longer than usual. Making a family emergency kit can be fun for the family to do together. So ask your parents and your siblings, your brothers and sisters, to assist you. What do you think needs to be included in the kit? Well, you need water. How much water? You need water that will last you for at least 3 days. Okay? And I am told that each person will consume about a gallon of water per day. You also need food. And you need food for that same period of time. You also need a battery powered radio. Can anybody tell me why you would need that? Well, you will need that to stay tuned to news, what is happening in the disaster or the emergency. As updates are given, you will be able to keep abreast of what is happening. You will also need a flashlight. And of course, you know why. If the electricity is off, then when it becomes dark, the flashlight will enable you to be able to see your way around. And of course, you need extra batteries. Extra batteries for the radio, extra batteries for the flashlight. You would also need a first aid kit. And in that kit, you will have things like bandages, plaster. You would also have things like alcohol or any solution that you will want to use in order to clean a cut or such like. You also will need in that first aid kit medication. For persons within the family, those who take medication, you will need to make sure that they have their medication in that emergency kit so that being displaced for that period of time, they would not find themselves in any difficulty. You also need toiletries, soap, toilet paper, toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant, etc. You would also want to put in there hand soap and or hand sanitizer. And of course, you know why. You know how important it is to keep your hands clean, keep your hands sanitized. It would also be good to have some wet wipes. A whistle would also be a good thing to have included in that kit for attracting the attention of persons. And garbage bags also, because you will have garbage and you will want to keep it in a collected manner. Okay, dust mask is another thing that would be good to have in that kit. Let's assume that it was an earthquake and there were buildings falling and there's a lot of debris and dust around, then having dust masks would be a good thing. A manual can opener, so that if you have canned stuff as part of your foods, you can get them open with ease. Plastic sheeting and duct tape. Well, you know that duct tape is good for everything and can practically be used on anything. So plastic sheeting, cell phones, and a charger, and of course a backup battery if possible. You know how important a cell phone is, and practically almost everybody owns a cell phone. But having a cell phone and not a charger, well, again, if the electricity is off and you don't have a generator, the charger is of no use to you. But if you have a backup battery, then when that battery within the phone goes dead, you can switch batteries and try to get the rundown battery charge someplace else so that you can make the change over again later. You will still always have a phone ready with ready access. You also need to put into the kit some change of clothing. Now, bear in mind that in an emergency, you are not going on a vacation. You know how some people pack when they're going on vacation? They want to put in everything. Now, in emergency packing, you obviously will not put in everything, but you will put in some things that you would need to keep yourself covered and warm. What about books and games and puzzles? Should you put that in your emergency kit as well? And I will say yes, because in an emergency, if you are displaced from your home and you have to go to a shelter, that is a place where you would be staying whilst you are away from home in the disaster, you will have lots of free time on your hand. And so you will want to occupy yourself meaningfully. A game or two that you can play as a family, or a puzzle that you can put together. These things will keep you occupied and take your mind somewhat off the disaster and the displacement that you are experiencing, at least for a time. You can also put in there some pencils and some paper and crayons or markers. So this is another way of occupying your time as well. You will surely want to put into that kit a favorite stuffed toy or a blanket. You know how having a stuffed toy can help a child to sleep. Now, when I was a traveling officer and used to travel quite frequently, I used to find every time I got to the hotel and would unpack my bag, I would find a stuffed toy in it. My son, he thought that I needed it, so he would put one of his stuffed toys into my luggage bag, and I will discover it when I get to the hotel and unpack. So I will keep it with me and I will cuddle it and I will sleep, so that when he asked me the next day, how did I sleep? I said, well, the toy helped me to sleep well. And then, of course, you can also have some name tags. Okay? So these are some of the most important things that you will need to have in your emergency kit. There you have it, boys and girls. All you need now is the help of your mummies and daddies, brothers and sisters to put your emergency kits together. And I hope you have lots of fun as you collect the items that you need for your kit. The items can be stored in a plastic bin or a backpack like the one you see on the screen. Let's recap what we said. Have a communication plan. Establish a family meeting place that is familiar to all the members of your family and that is easy to find. Make a list of all family members and have their phone numbers, that is the cell number, and the work numbers recorded. You may add to that list neighbors and relatives. Decide on the person to be contacted in case of a disaster or emergency and have all family members contact that person. What you need for your emergency kit: water, food, a battery-powered radio, flashlight, extra batteries, first aid kit, toiletries, hand soap or sanitizer, wet wipes, a whistle, garbage bags, dust mask, a manual can opener, plastic sheeting and duct tape, cell phone and charger with backup batteries, change of clothes, books, games, puzzles, pencil, paper and crayons, favorite stuffed toy, and or a blanket, and name tags for the members of your families. I trust that as you work on your plan for an emergency, that you will be well prepared for any eventualities. May God bless you.
Alrighty, boys and girls, now it's time for a few questions on our preparedness lesson. Quiz time! Number 1. What is an emergency? Answer: an emergency is something that happens suddenly and has to be attended to right away. Question number 2. What does evacuation mean? Answer: evacuation means to leave a place quickly in an organized way. Question number 3. What are some things you need to do to be prepared for an emergency? Here are some answers. 1. Make a plan. 2. Make an emergency kit. 3. Know the telephone numbers of your family members. Great job, boys and girls. I'm sure you were paying attention and that you got all, if not most, of those questions correct. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Dear God, help me to be kind, loving, and forgiving. Help me to remember that you have a special plan for my life. Help me to tell others about your love and forgiveness. Jesus, I pray. Amen.